All right, we're on Chapter 2 still, Section 2.3, Part 1, Solve and Check. And we're on number 7. Of 11x plus 7 equals 5 times 2x plus 2 plus x. The right-hand side is not simplified, so that's the first thing we need to do, is simplify the right-hand side. So the left side is fine, 11x plus 7, we write that, and we need to do the distributive property. 5 times 2x is 10x, plus 5 times 2 is 10, plus x. And then on the right-hand side, we need to do the 10x plus x. Remember, that's the same as plus 1x, so that's 11x plus 10. This is interesting. So I'm going to get the variables on one side, constants on the other. So let's go ahead and subtract 11x from both sides. And that'll give me 7 equals 10. You could have also subtracted 7 from both sides, and then you would get some other nonsense problem, but this is never true, isn't it? So there is no solution to this problem. Anytime you end up with a nonsensical statement like 0 equals 5 or 8 equals negative 9 or 1/3 equals 1/4, something like that, if anytime you get a false statement, there's no solution. A lot of people make the mistake when they have 11x minus 11x and they'll write x, but that's not true. Remember, those are completely eliminated. 11x minus 11x is 0. So the solution here is no solution. You just write that out, no solution. And that's the answer to that problem. This is called a contradiction also. Anytime you have 7 equals 10, a false statement, sometimes people say that's a contradiction. So this is an equation where there is no solution. Doesn't matter what number you put in for it, you'll never have a solution that works. Number 8, we begin with the left-hand side trying to simplify it because there's some parentheses, so we've got to do the distributive property. So we do 4 times x is 4x, minus 4 times 3 is minus 12, minus 2 equals 4x minus 14. And then we simplify the left-hand side still. We have a negative 12 and a negative 2. That's 4x minus 14. Oops. All right, now at this point, notice it says 4x minus 14 equals 4x minus 14. You could put the variables on one side or the other, but at this point, anytime you have it exactly the same thing on both sides, it's always true. So there's going to be infinitely many solutions. This is called an identity. In other words, on both sides, you've got the same thing. So it's always true, so the answer is no matter what you put in for x, this will always be true. You can put 5 for x, 6 for x, 1/2 for x, 39 for x, 156 for x. Any number you replace with x will make it true. So any number you put in for x will make the original equation true. So there's infinitely many solutions. That's the answer. Right? Okay. Usually we say that the answer is all real numbers. There's infinitely many solutions. Infinitely means there's as many as you want. And the answer would be all real numbers. So just to clarify, there are infinitely many solutions, but then you have to say what are all the solutions. It's any real number in the whole world, any number on the number line, in other words. So let's recap the special cases for number 7 and 8. If you get a false statement, like 2 equals negative 5, or any false statement, when solving a linear equation, the answer is always no solution. And by the way, to get a false statement, that means you won't have any variables involved. They pretty much are eliminated, and you just have two numbers, on one number on each side of the equal sign, but they're not the same number. So that's what I mean by a false statement, and the answer will then be no solution. If you get a true statement, now here there might be variables involved. You might get something like 8 equals 8, or you might have something like 2x plus 1 equals 2x plus 1. Exactly the same thing on both sides of the equal side. When you're solving a linear equation, then the solution is all real numbers. So be careful when you solve those special cases. All right, number 9. Here's the problem with fractions again. So you have alternative ways to do this. You can simply work with the fractions, adding 1/3 to both sides and then multiplying by the reciprocal. I think it's easier to multiply both sides by the least common denominator to eliminate the fractions. You can only do this if you have an equation, multiplying both sides by the same number. So I've got 9 times 2/9 x minus 9 times 1/3 equals 9 times 1. Alright, so notice what happens. The 9's cancel, so I have 2x minus, here the 3 goes into the 9 3 times, so I've got minus 3 equals 9. Now we're down to a much simpler looking equation without fractions. So we add 3 to both sides. 2x is 12, divide by 2, so x is 6. All right, and then again, the formal way of writing the solution set is in braces. So the answer to this problem is 6. Now we need to go back and replace the variable with 6 to check it. So you have 2/9 times 6, and I'm going to write that as 6 over 1, minus 1/3. And we need to do order of operations here. So I have to do multiplication first, and 3 goes into 6 and 9. So I could divide top and bottom by 3, and that'll give you 4/3, right? Because 2 times 2 is 4, minus 1/3, which is 3/3. Nicely, it had a common denominator, and 3/3 means 3 divided by 3, which is 1. And on the right side I had 1. So yes, it checks. Now, keep in mind there are other ways to solve this problem. I'm just using the method of multiplying both sides by the least common denominator. All right, we're on to section 2.4. We're doing application or word problems or puzzle problems. I like to think of them as puzzle problems. So, the directions are to solve using algebra. You're going to define a variable, write an equation, solve, and check. So let's look at number 1. 4 less than 6 times a number is the sum of the number and 6. So what are we looking for? A number. I forgot to put that part down. Find the number. So let's do that. Find the number. Okay. All right. So we're looking for a number. That's a clue. Use that to define your variables. All right, so we're going to let the number be called, how about n for number? All right, 4 less than 6 times a number is the sum of the number and 6. So this really breaks up the equation. All right, so the left side of the word is tells us what's on the left side of the equation. 4 less than 6 times a number. All right, so we're subtracting 4 from something. So we're subtracting 4, right, because it's 4 less than something, and it's 6 times the number. Remember what we called the number? It was n. So we have 6n. And on the right side, we've got the sum of the number and 6. So since the number is n, the sum would be n plus 6. There's our equation. And now we simply solve this equation like we've been doing all along. We could subtract n from both sides to get the variables on the left and add 4 to get the constants on the right. So that gives us 5n equals 10, and dividing by 5 you get n equals 2. Now here's the difference. This is not an equation, it's a word problem. So n represents the number. You want to find the number. So the answer should be the number is 2. So don't plug it back in your equation, see if it makes sense to you. 4 less than 6 times the number. All right, well, what would be, if the number was 2, 6 times the number would be 12, so you check logically. You start off with 12, and then you subtract 4, and you get 8. So the question, is that the same thing as the sum of the number and 6? Well, if the number's 2, yes, it is the same thing. So you have to answer in words. The number is 2. You've checked it using your own logic. Don't go back to the equation because you might have written the wrong equation.